It must be a privilege to serve members of society.
You have to become so generous. Thousands of people go to watch sports. It's very easy to put out a work. The system has to fail. The origin of laws. Now, I can say very much about the origin of laws, and I realize that there are many interacting variables that shape the laws, but I'm going to compress it into the essence of the establishment of laws. It appears that years ago, in order to manage tribes and small communities, it was very difficult to manage people unless they invented laws. Now, the tribe leader always got the best of the deal, as a rule. And in order to assure that be perpetuated, laws were invented. Laws originate only because of scarcity. If you have difficulty making that connection, imagine fruit growing all over the world on every tree. There would be no laws as to how much fruit you can eat if it grew all over the place. Only when food is scarce does laws come in. Not only food, but when anything is scarce, man makes laws as to who gets what. And naturally, the control group of any society gets the best. And that's the way the law is set. If we run out of material, laws are arranged so that some people get so much and others get so much, and by the amount of work you do, you get so much or so much less. But remember this, as essence, a way of thinking about law is think in terms of scarcity. If most of the airplanes disappeared, for whatever reasons, hurricane storms, then the few planes that did exist would be used by the establishment, the key rulers of the establishment. Do you understand that? If thousands of planes exist, thousands of cars, there's no need to make laws regarding who uses cars. But you can make laws about cars. On the highway, the speeds, all that sort of thing. That's to maintain a degree of control. But the best way to maintain control is through technology, so that you make cars that can't hit one another and can't exceed the speed as established in the given district. And rather than having the speed rate indicated on the highway, the power output for cars will be a certain range, instead of saying, do not drive over 60 miles an hour, or the speed limit is 60 miles an hour. The power output in that region is 60 miles an hour. And also there are other sensors that prevent cars from hitting each other. It doesn't say drive carefully. The life you take may be your own. You don't need that. You need cars. Well, can that be done? It's done in elevators. When you get in an elevator, you can't excel the speed. It operates at the optimal speed for that elevator under those conditions. So let me repeat myself again and again. I can say a lot about law, but all laws are based upon availability of goods and services, or scarcity. If there's an abundance of food, if there's abundance of oxygen, no one can put a price tag on it. If there's an abundance of underground water, nobody cares how much water you use. But laws come into existence when and only when there's a scarcity. Do you understand that? You cannot maintain laws with abundance. So when people say, well, what are the new laws in the Venus Project? Well, to the degree that we can solve problems, produce an abundance, there's hardly any need for laws. If we can raise children to behave in the most appropriate way under those conditions. You don't need laws. If the sun shines every day, I know that in Sweden, which the sun doesn't shine every day, it's not out every day. When the sun comes out, everybody comes out in the street and sits with their face toward the sun because it's scarce. So if you still have difficulty with that, the price of a house is based on the amount of energy or people employed and the materials used to construct that house. If the materials were just abundant all over the place, there wouldn't be much material cost for the house. And the rarer the materials, the higher the cost. Gold is expensive, remember, only because it's rare and it doesn't rot or rust or disintegrate. I said this before, I'll say it again so you'll understand. If it rained gold for 3 days, people would collect it, fill all their drawers, the attic, the cellar with gold. But if it continued to rain gold for months, they would sweep it out of the house. And there'd be no laws regarding how much gold you have. Do you understand that? That's the origin of laws. It has nothing to do with decency and ethics. It has to do with distribution of scarce resources. So if you ask me, will there be laws? There's no laws regarding the amount of breaths you take. There are laws against smoking in a submarine if it's trapped on the bottom of the sea and can't operate. If you light a cigar at that time, the whole gang will come at you and say, no smoking, because of the conditions. You think man makes laws to make life better for people? No, it's to manage scarcity. So if we move toward the production of an abundance, the amount of laws will diminish, directly proportionate to how much we eliminate scarcity. People think man makes laws so that life will be better for people. Not necessarily. Sometimes it's better for the control group or the selected few rather than the majority. The majority of people were not allowed to vote if they didn't own property in the old days. Only people that owned property. Women were recently given the right to vote. But what does that really mean? It means that the values they vote for have been pre-existing. The values that you give people about who to vote for are pre-existing. People don't know who to vote for or what to vote for. They vote for a person that looks like he might make a good president. But they don't know that. They have no way of knowing those things, so they vote. And it seems like it's democratic and lawful and correct, but it is not. I would say that Hitler never led Germany into the Nazi culture. I would say the Germans were preconditioned to accept those values. Otherwise, if he got up and spoke about things like he spoke about in Sweden, he'd never make it. Because the Swedish people are conditioned differently. And what they would vote for is different. All of the ideas are based on scarcity. Just how much freedom you have. If building materials for aircraft are abundantly available all over the world, the price of aircraft would be lower. And if it was rare, only dignitaries will fly. I hope you understand that. Of course, I can go into all kinds of ramifications of law and order, but they're all based on scarcity. So if you wish to think about laws, think about scarcity and its effect upon laws. Maybe another example is what happened to love when people get a divorce. The wife might say, I want the house, the car, and the kids, and the bank account. So is love a constant? Of course not. Love depends on many situations. Where is the love when the wife says, I want the house, the car, and the kids? She doesn't say, I'd like to split it equally, or rarely does she say that. So what happened to love? Love is also a product of scarcity. Very few people have a life full of love. In fact, it's an ideal people hope for. Now, you can't really have love if you have to appeal to your husband to get a new car or a new dress or a new interior or furnishings. But if you have your own purchasing power, if you have purchasing power whereby you can access anything you want, you don't have to appeal to anybody anymore. So should we appeal to people? Of course not. In a free society, you shouldn't have to appeal to anybody. You shouldn't have to walk over to your husband and say, my car isn't operating well. I've had the same car for 5 years, honey. How about a new car? He says, well, let me think about it. That puts him down when he says that on your list. You say, when do you want the car? We'll go out this afternoon and get it. If he's loaded, he can do that easily. If he's not, he says, I'm unable to do that. She says, well, let me use your car. So I need it to get to work. In other words, you don't have limitless choice. So laws are made, again. What do you want to know about law?
Relating to scarcity, like if you're in a vehicle today and you go 90 miles an hour, that's a different form of law and order of controlling somebody.
Well, they don't know how to control the speed of cars, so they put up a sign. But if technically they can design cars to travel at the appropriate speed and ride a magnetic inlay in the highway or some other laser beam, then you wouldn't need any law.
Do you feel we should work on, instead of working on something with sensors, work on the individual itself to why is it that they want to press on the gas pedal and go 95?
No, we'll do the cars just like the elevators. We won't leave anything up to individuals that can hurt other people.
Well, how about domestic relationships? If somebody isn't willing to share the loved one with somebody else and they get irritated, they become violent in the house.
Well, children are brought up a certain way in schools in the future that will accommodate that problem. In other words, you can be brought up not to want to hurt anyone or to hate anyone that isn't of your religion or your viewpoint. But when you bring up kids in school and you show them there are many different ways of looking at the world and many different people have different interpretations, if they understand that, that's exactly what an anthropologist is supposed to do. He's supposed to find out the values of a different culture. So he writes in his book, in this land people do this, in this land they do that, and the kid understands that that culture invades the value system of people to make them conform to that culture, otherwise very difficult to manage. Then they design punishments to get you to conform to the law. But if you can meet human needs, most human needs, you don't need as many laws. You only need laws during periods of disaster, shortages, things of that sort. And law enforcement will be definitely used if a meteor hits the earth and destroys a lot of the vegetation. Then vegetation will be allocated in quantities, different quantities for different people. But the distribution center, they will have to devise equipment on you. When you walk over and say, I need 5 boxes of ham or 10 boxes of vegetables, it'll scan you and know that you already got it. Do you understand that? Instead of making a law, there are very few people that try to fly jumping out of windows unless they're on drugs. You know what I mean? I think that when you bring up children, they won't try to swim to England. They know that it's far away, and they don't. Most people don't attempt that. Only when a person is on drugs or brain damage will they try to swim to England. Well, most people don't try that. But I see schools that really educates.